blonde. So why are you laughing? So naturally blonde. So I'm wearing glasses and I have like earrings in my both ears. I would like to thank you all for being here, like this headquarters at the port area in Rio. So thank you all for following us online live. So Rio de Janeiro is about like to host like the G20. So it's a multilateral forum that since 1989 is promoting meetings between governments and its representatives. And its mission is reinforce like the worldwide governance with the important topics. So the presidency of the G20 that gathers the most important economies is rotating. And for the very first time, Brazil is taking the lead. So the mandate began in 2023, 1st of December, and it ends 30 December 2024. So next week, between the 18th, 19th of November, so leaders like from 19 member countries plus the African unit and the European community will sign up like deals and agreements to deal with worldwide challenges. But the wonderful city is not the only one involved. Like from north to south, like work groups from the G20 have gathered in more than 100 meetings in like 3 host cities, like to include the Brazilian people about like public policies and so we can get a little bit closer to the decisions. So we actually open like the first G20 social forum under the presidency of the Brazilian Republic. So if our motto is like building a fair world and a sustainable planet, nothing more fair than getting like non-governmental decision makers for the decision-making process. And before we begin, we had good news to embrace like the people in such an important event. This is going to be repeated in 2025 in South Africa. So yes, a round of applause. Important. So another initiative is like the Korea G20. So this get together of like so many important like creators from Brazil and abroad. So here at Korea G20, we are going to focus in 3 thematic axes that reflect the Brazilian presidency under the G20. So fighting hunger, inequality, and the launch of the Alliance of Against Hunger and Inequality, and sustainability, climate change, and a fair transition. So nothing would be possible without our partners. So here with us, we have like BNDES, like Banco do Brasil, Caixa Econômica, Petrobras, and Itaipu. And also a round of applause, please. And besides the G20 talks, which is the main stage, we have like many other actions like promoting dialogue and exchanging experiences. You saw on the LED screens, we have a very broad agenda with workshops, podcasts, and films, and also like the programming from our partners. So our KriaCast is broadcast by YouTube for the federal government and the G20 TV. So be tuned. Okay, I see the presenters here. So before we begin our G20 talks, I will talk a little bit about our agenda. So the Mão na Massa agendas, we have a focus with the creation of digital content. We have like people from all ages participating to produce content. So our KriaCast will gather like panelists and influencers to promote like round of talks talking about specific topics of the G20 talks. We have like films being broadcast and many other activities. So here is a tip for the people here present. Our day is full. Enjoy it to the fullest. So reminding you that we have activities here on this stage, and we have simultaneous translation in 3 languages: channel 1 Portuguese, channel 2 English, and channel 3 Spanish. So equipments are available for anyone. So if you have any questions, just look for someone in the production. So we have like the sign language, Alessandra, Yatsa, and Susanna. So the chief of states who are here at the G20 represent 2/3 of the worldwide population, so 85% of the GDP, and also 75% of the world trade. So that means that from this get together, we have a potential like for decisions that will change the global society. So G20 exists because it believes in the cooperation as a force of change, a fair world and a more sustainable planet also. So economy cannot sustain itself if the environment is not well balanced. Find this balance is most necessary. So you know where we are lacking. So in reaching the objectives of like the sustainable developments, number two, which wants to get to like hunger zero in 2030. The last report with the state of food announced and disclosed this year by five specific agencies, important data have been disclosed. The estimate is that around 733 million people in the world facing hunger, faced hunger in 2023. I will repeat, 723,000 people hunger. So that equals like 1 in 11 people in the world. So the world is not evolving. On the other hand, this report shows that the world has gone backwards. And the levels of malnutrition compared to 2008, 2009, for the past 3 years, the number are stagnated. So Brazil has moved out of the map of hunger, but unfortunately, like hunger has come back to Brazilian households. So the fight against hunger is really strong, and we are tackling, and the income have increased 38.6% in 2023. So last year, there was a reduction of 85% of food insecurity in Brazil. And with that, in 2023, 24 million people have moved out of the nightmare of the hunger. Very good. So as one of the main pillars in its political career against hunger and inequality, guide the President Lula. So under the presidency of the G20, Brazil has stated as the priority the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty that is going to be launched in the summit of the leaders that have already more than 100 adhesions. So this initiative is a practical means like to mobilize financial means to implement and amplify on a global scale actions, public policies, and efficient programs against poverty and hunger developed by many different countries. The main objective is to amplify bases to overcome hunger in the long run. So now it's the time for our first G20 talks of 2024. So you all have your simultaneous translations devices. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. Okay? I would like now to invite one influence of culinary content with more than 31.7 million followers on TikTok and 12 millions on Instagram. She comes from Lebanon and she lives in Venezuela, and she has like a criticism of the spectacularization of the use of the food. And then she has like the Master TikTok Awards in Mexico City. 2024, she won the Bilibili Awards in Shanghai as the best content for international gastronomy. And also, she used the Better You Award for content creator, and it has a positive impact in the world. So please come to the stage, Surtani Hejay, Sir Cooks. Please, another show of hands. So here with us, also we have like an activist, like South African actress and personality from the television, and she became like the goodwill ambassador of the UN Agency for Refugees, and she was awarded by a female highlight in Africa, and she has gathered like millions like to build schools all over South Africa, and also she fights against malnutrition. Nomzano Mbata, please, more applauses. I also would like to call like one economist and researcher, professor, and a doctor in public health. She was the Minister of Social Development and Fighting Hunger during the year 2011 to May 2016, coordinating the Plan Brazil Without Misery that moved 22 million people out of the extreme poverty, and also coordinating the Bolsa Familia and the also like the cisterns that delivered lots of the cisterns in the semi-arid in the northeast of the country. Teresa Campelo, please. A lot. Now I'd like to call she, who is like a sociologist with a specialization in history and working with sustainable development and Itaipu Binational and also initiatives related to gender equality and fighting inequality. And currently she is the ambassador of like school food and also the ambassador for the sustainable development, and also she's the voice of the world voice of the alliances. So the First Lady of Brazil, Janja Lula da Silva. So Carioca always kisses twice. All right. I would like now, for to start the conversation, like paying attention and taking notes. So we have lots of very important things to talk about, and we want to open up some time at the end for Q&A. Okay, so please take notes. So, like to begin our conversation here, I would like to be very inclusive that you do like a self description, and then we can promote this kickoff.
I'm going to start by greeting all the people who are here today. Good morning. Teresa, can you move your chair a bit back? Are you okay, everyone else? Yes? Let's put away her bag. You should never leave your bag on the floor because you will lose your money. My mother used to say that all the time. Don't put your bag on the floor, girl. So I'd like to start by saying that it's an honor to be here, but I'm going to give you my self-description. I've never done that before, so I'll do it now. It will be a first time. I am a brown woman, a meter 63 tall, so I'm kind of short. My husband likes that. I am an almost blonde woman. I'm in a transition. I don't know whether I'm going to keep on being blonde or I'm going to be auburn because naturally my tips, the end points of my hair tend to be blonder. I have brown eyes. I wear glasses. In fact, my name in Libra, Janja, is my nickname. Ajanta is my nickname because of the type of glasses I wear. When I wear contact lenses, there are people who don't recognize me. They look for my eyeglasses. Well, so before starting off these G20 talks, I'd like to welcome you all. I'd like to welcome everyone who came here to participate in this very special moment, a special moment for President Lula, the social G20 in Rio, and next week, the summit, the leaders' summit of the G20. So from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to thank all of you who listened to our call, our global call against poverty and hunger, for the energy transition, and for the fight against inequality and a new governance and architecture, a financial architecture worldwide. This is the call that President Lula extended for the G20, and it's very special. Rio is my city. I am a Carioca at heart. It's a bit clouded, but the sun will come out. I'm sure that these days are going to be very special for all of you who are here sharing this moment with us. I have said since President Lula took on the chairmanship of the G20 that this is a very special event, but he is not doing this alone. This is a shared chairmanship with the social movements, with the international organizations. We made sure to have a shared presidency, and this moment is actually extremely special. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really needed to give you my initial greetings by bringing you a special hug from President Lula. He will arrive at Rio at the end of the day today or tonight, but I'm sure that he is keeping up with what we're doing. Once in a while, he has a look to see what we're talking about over here. Well, that's great. Makosana, give us your self-description, please.
Pretty hard to follow that. Hello, everyone. Bom dia. Hey. My name is Nomzamo Mbata. I am from South Africa. I am an actress and I am also a humanitarian. I believe in the power of standing up for something that is much greater than yourself. It is the reason why it is the calling of my heart to not only be an actress and live the glitz and glamorous life, but to actually speak about things that are important, that move us forward as a human race. It is my absolute honor to be on the stage. Thank you for the invitation. And thank you so much to your incredible team as well at G20 and CRIA. And I will stop there for now because I know we're going to get into the conversation. But before I go, special thing to know about me is that I am my grandmother's favorite grandchild. But don't tell the others about that.
Maravilhosa. Surti, por favor, a sua autodescrição, querida.
Okay. I am Surtani. I come from Venezuela. I'm half Lebanese and half Venezuelan. And I believe firmly that wherever we are in the world, whether we are at home or not, we can make small changes. And as such, from the start, from the work I did at home, which was making food, I started to give out smiles on the street because I realized that not everyone lived in the same situation. At home, I had everything. But when I went to the street, I saw that my neighbors and the children playing on the streets did not have the same things I did, the same things needed to be happy. So I decided that wherever I was, even if it was at home, I would always try to do my bit to contribute to the happiness of other people. And that is when I started to use my social media to share that which I was doing, and I realized that this motivated people elsewhere. And many other people wanted to do the same and contribute as I do. Your work is wonderful, but I would like you to please do a physical description for those who cannot see you so that they can understand who you are. I spoke too much. I am sorry. Okay, so if we can come back, please, to do your self-description. Yes, can you speak about your looks, physically, your appearance? Well, many of you may not see me, but I am a person that is a bit shy. It's difficult for me to speak in front of people. And I try to come out of my shell and to be more spontaneous and to say what I feel. But anyway, I am a girl that comes from a mixture of two worlds, from Venezuela and from Lebanon. So it's a mixture of Latin and Arab. So that's who I am. Right. That's your turn. Your self-description, please. Good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here. I'm going to give you my self-description. I have brown hair. Just explaining to our guests, because in fact, we're doing a self-description for people who are blind so that they can, in their minds, see what's happening, so that they're better able to visualize what's going on up front. We have many lovely people here, and I wish they would do the same. So I have brown hair. Many people won't believe me, but I don't paint my hair. I am 1.68 m. I'm wearing black pants, a black t-shirt, a blazer that somebody said was very nice. It's beautiful. It's black with beige flowers. I have golden shoes on. I wear glasses. I have on some earrings and a necklace, and I'm very, very happy to be here with you today. Teresa, you got a 10 in your self-description. Super approved. Eu não entendi a pergunta. Not a problem. So, Janja, this proposal for a global alliance is very bold. It proposes a pact and agreement between the most powerful institutions and organizations in the world. What's happening now? And why did Brazil decide to propose that? Well, as you said in the opening of the G20 talks, the matter of hunger is a cause in President Lula's life This is a goal that he carries with him. I believe since he arrived here as a migrant with his family from the Northeast because of the hunger in that region, he went to Sao Paulo. So the matter of fighting hunger is a special cause of the president. And actually, when he took office in 2023, in his third period in office, and he started receiving the numbers because we didn't have access to many of the numbers of the government before. So when the numbers started to get to him, and we saw that 33 million people were once again facing hunger in Brazil. This was not just in Brazil, of course. The situation got worse radically at a global level in the last decades. So we had a movement in the 80s that was very strong to fight against hunger in Africa. But this grew without precedents in the world, especially in terms of inequality, the concentration of income, the social pyramid of the world is becoming with a bigger and bigger base, narrower and narrower. So President Lula, in the presidency of the G20, envisaged the possibility of taking this issue to the developed world so that they could actually contribute for us to change that global reality, not just in Brazil. We know that in Brazil we have been advancing quickly to change that. In a year and 8 months in office, we have taken out 24,000 people of hunger. The prospect is for us to leave the hunger map by 2026. We have public policies that are effective and that with a good command and direction will have a good effect. And Teresa is here with us. She lived through this in the first 2 periods in office of President Lula and now naturally is working for all of this to come true. But I think that this is something he foresaw. And as you all know, President Lula has a mission in his life. He wants to be the voice of the least favored. He wants to be a voice against inequality. And that is why he is creating the Global Alliance. He actually launched this in India. It was a very special moment. I was there at the G20. I am one of those women who goes everywhere. I want to be in everything. I go. I do because I need to know what they're talking about, what they're discussing. I want to talk to people and so forth. So I was there when he received the presidency of the G20. And one of the first things that he did was launch a call for a fairer world. And he launched the Global Alliance Against Hunger. So this year of 2024, we've been working on that. And I took to myself the responsibility of disseminating the Global Alliance. We know that we have governmental forums that discuss these things. We have groups of diplomats that talk to people. But we needed to open this channel with civil society. And that's what I've done. I've done this in all the spaces I go to, where I talk to people, where I'm invited to speak. I speak about the Global Alliance. I have had discussions. We have worked a lot. And this has led us to this moment that I think is very special. And I believe that the Global Alliance may become a tool to transform mankind. We don't have much time left. Time urges. And we need to work not just against hunger, but we need to work against climate change, both of which are very much connected. So before we go on, I'd just like to ask a favor to the audience. I know that many things would like to comment something or another throughout the transmission, so I'd like you to speak a bit lower, okay? Our guests are listening to simultaneous interpretation, and it really bothers people. They can't hear well if you are sitting there speaking to each other. So please help us in this so that this can be fruitful to everyone.
That is, the whole world recognizes like Bolsa Família has well succeeded a transformative action for the Brazilian people. What do you think that the world can learn from this initiative and how it can be adapted to other realities? So look at, you see like Bolsa Família is now celebrating 21 years. So I was at the beginning, so people begin like counting how old we are. So when President Lula launched it 21 years ago, I was there in the group that organizes it. And I remember that and launched not only Bolsa Familia, but this idea that let's end hunger in Brazil. It was a shock because people thought that, well, it was just like blah, blah. You know why? Because we have this idea that hungry has always existed, has always been this way. It's natural. We always had poor people in the world. So to say that we're going to end hunger and you're going to fight it, it's a challenge. This is what we are proposing to the world and saying, well, no, this is not natural. It's not naturally that we are going to end it. And it's not natural that it will continue. We have to act on it. So Bolsa Familia was like the biggest cry out loud of this whole set of policies that was not only the Bolsa Familia. Poverty doesn't have just one single face. It's multi-faced, like lack of water, lack of food, lack of education, and health. So we have many different faces. So maybe like the hunger is the most dramatic one, and then Bolsa Familia comes into play right there. So in many different places that I had the opportunity to talk about it, the people raise their hands and say, well, wouldn't it be better like to teach like how to fish instead of giving the fish? And then 21 years later, I still go to the same places talking about Bolsa Familia, and people still talk about the same. Wouldn't it be better to teach how to fish? As if people didn't know how to work or didn't want to work. So Bolsa Familia, along with the poor ones, face this huge prejudice. Well, let me just interrupt you, but we are in a content with content creators and on the internet. We see people irresponsibly saying that the responsibles for Bolsa Familia use the money like to buy makeup, lots of prejudice. And then we see influencers like actually echoing it, unfortunately. So how? Well, it's a model for other countries, like countries such as the ones that are our guests. But how could we tell the influencers to fight that prejudice? Well, first, let's say that 21 years ago, if no one has ever made a program such as Bolsa Familia, the pilot had like 4 million people in the family. So President Lula, there is something that he doesn't like is like pilot projects. The first pilot, we had 4 million people, 21 million people. So back then, people could say, well, now, 21 years later, we have evidences, scientific evidences. There was nothing that was more studied than Bolsa Familia. No other public policy. It's not the truth that people do not work. People work and work a lot. The Brazilian people in South Africa and Venezuela and other places in the world, like poor people work and work a lot. And even though due to a whole like set of like lack of access, they do not have access to income that provides good life for them. So Bolsa Familia is a complement. It doesn't replace income. We have lots of scientific evidence published showing that most of the Bolsa Familia people, most of them do not work. Why? Because they are under 16 years of age and we do not want them to work. Adults, most of them work. And when they don't, mothers that are taking care of the kids and they do not have another place, nursing homes and other places. So it's not the truth. So the main benefit of like Bolsa Familia for the past 21 years was to accumulate evidence. People work, want to improve, want to get better. People are at school, vaccinated. And Bolsa Familia actually achieved things that we could never even dream of. Like imagine the like fighting malnutrition, reducing mortality. But we never thought that Bolsa Familia would reduce like leprosy, reduce tuberculosis, or reduce like suicides among women. So we have many different publications showing the impact here in Brazil, reducing inequality in many different fronts. So I think that this is extremely important. Why Bolsa Familia does that? Because I would just like to try to finish because I know that we have a short time. Bolsa Familia, even though it's this super stigmatized thing, it's like a magnet. So it's the main task. It pulls people looking for like a program like to transfer income, and then they get into the mesh of like public policies. So as they register in the single record, we know where they are, where they live, if they have water, if they do not have electricity, if how the household is. So they, if they have like elderly people living, and then what we do, then you provide access to health. It helps us like to put them in the radar, and then the public sector can get those families overcoming this whole set of poverty. So I believe that the main contribution was precisely that. So no program has to be the same in other places of the world, but we did. Well, each country has its own specificities. So our international guests, they have something in common. They use their platforms and their influence like to spread mechanisms to fight poverty and hunger, impacting many people. Now I want to know from them, how is this journey? So beginning with you, Surti. So how do you see that social media have helped people like to get aware about like food waste in your specific case?
Sometimes it's hard to believe the impact that social media can have and how they affect our daily lives because we are on the phones all day. And it's part of everything we see all the time. So we have viral videos. Videos go viral because they do something funny. They show their bags on the floor and they seem to like to see people throwing food on the floor, food that is wasted. So I tried to change that vision. I tried to show how the food can be used better to help people who need it more. Because sometimes we who have everything don't realize that other people that we meet every day do not. So when we do this type of silly video in which we're wasting water, in which we're wasting food, this may hurt other people, and we want to have an impact on the younger generation so that children grow with better values. And we want to show them that we should not waste food. If we're not going to eat it, we should not prepare the plate. And we do this by sharing our daily lives so that other children can learn to do the same. Wonderful, wonderful work, Susie. We'll speak more about that later. And how about you? How do you see how social agents are helping people become more aware of these issues we're discussing?
It's important in terms of how you present the issue. When you shift the narrative, people are able to understand things much better. For a very long time, Africa has been seen as a very destitute continent, but it's not. It's a developing world, right? But it's how you change the narrative. It's how you show the global audience of people who have resilience, of people who are able to overcome, of people who are skilled, of people who are capable, of the fact that there's so much that it has to offer. So for me, in my sense, in that I started off as an actress, but when I was 14 years old, the first time I left South Africa, I was invited by Save the Children Sweden to go to Nairobi, and I was there to represent South Africa. I was one of 3 students from South Africa, and they had galvanized children from all over the African continent to come together in Nairobi and to speak about the plights in which they're experiencing. I knew then that I wanted to be a part of something that was much greater than myself. And so when I became an actress, it was a natural progression to use the power of storytelling, to use the power of changing a narrative to better take the message to the world. I do a lot of field visits in refugee camps across the African continent, because outside of every other title that I hold, I'm also a Goodwill Ambassador for UNHCR. And for a very long time, the pictures and the videos of people in refugee camps have only told one single story: destitution. It's not true. It's simply not true. Because when you continue to show a destitute people, there's going to be continued donor fatigue. People will not want to put money into something that cannot sustain itself, that cannot rebuild itself. So what is our job? Our job is to show a people who are displaced not because they woke up and they were displaced because of their own doing. They're displaced because of war and conflict. They're displaced because of climate change. If there's flooding, if there's flash floods, they have to flee. They have to find refuge. They have to find a different place. These are people who are doctors in their own country. They wake up one day and the war has intensified. They've got to pack up, they've got to leave, they've got to find refuge. And so when they are in refugee camps, does that make them less qualified doctors? No. Does that make them less qualified teachers? No. In fact, they find themselves in a situation where they now have a new reality. And so I changed that narrative to say that refugees and asylum seekers are not destitute people. These are people who have been displaced because of consequences outside of their own doing. So when we shift that narrative, we then invite private sector. When you invite private sector into the conversation, banks from around the world will understand that there's an economy in refugee camps. There are people who are rebuilding. There are people who are selling fruits and vegetables, who are selling clothes, who want to start a new life. And so then it's like, okay, so how do we enter the chat, as we like to say? How do we enter the chat? How do we enter that system, that ecosystem, and become a part of that ecosystem to show that refugees are not an economic liability, but there's an asset element to it. So I use my voice, I use my public figure persona as a form of bringing awareness to things that other people may not be able to fully understand and fully grasp. I think with everything that we've seen, with the conflict that we've witnessed in the recent years and recent times, we realize that immigration and people seeking asylum is not a very far thing from anyone. So it's really just to change that narrative and to bring a light to it. And then outside of that, with building schools and partnering with I should probably say brands, big brands who want to get the voice of the young people, to say, if you're gonna go, for example, for Cotton On Foundation. Cotton On is a very big clothing brand. I'm not sure if we have it here in Brazil. But it's a very big clothing brand, and what they do is that they have products in store that people can purchase, and 100% of the proceeds goes towards all the efforts that Cotton On is doing. And hundreds of millions of dollars have been able to be raised from that. We take that money from the foundation and we build schools across the continent. We've been able to build 2 schools now in South Africa from my hometown, Durban, Guamashu, and it has really shifted the narrative and changed the perception that we have to have equal participation. I was at Unga, and I was at the Goalkeepers event for Gates Foundation, and the big award went to President Lula, and he was on stage and he was giving a speech, and he said something so profound that the entire room stood up and we started clapping. He said, "I'm not against people having money. I'm against there being poor people, because the world has enough for everyone's need, not for everyone's greed."
Ela falou de iluminar essa questão, né? Que presença luminosa. Eu queria pedir um aplauso também para a tradução simultânea, que está arrasando, não tem atraso nenhum. Eu não sei o nome da colega que está fazendo, mas maravilhosa, parabéns. Gente, a Surtânia, eu falei dos conteúdos dela, né? Ela tem uma dinâmica de vídeos nas redes sociais bem específica. Ela mostra trechos de vídeos de outros criadores de conteúdo.
Showing like wasting food, and then she uses like the food that she shows in the video that with the food that has been wasted, and distributing among people under vulnerability. So I believe that some influencers may get a little bit upset due to this movement. However, you have more than 50 million followers in social media, and you engage quite a lot of people, including many Brazilians interact with your content, providing support to your initiatives. How did you get to this language like that you use in your video?
Yes, that's right. It might seem as though they don't like it when we take their videos and try to make magic with food. But that's not right, because I have seen that Even they themselves have responded to the videos by creating other plates and going to the streets, sharing this food with the most vulnerable people. And this is just a small sample of how sometimes, without speaking a lot, just to give an example, because I don't share things with my voice. I just like to show things through videos. I like to show by action. And we see that the same people who wasted food before making stupid videos of food being thrown out, they themselves have started to create foods and sharing this food in the streets. So I say, wow, what a huge impact we are able to have on people without realizing it. Sometimes a small idea becomes something big because the networks, even if it's just one video, show it to hundreds of thousands of people who go out and repeat your actions. So that's where the importance of it lies, because when you work in a network, you should always try to share something positive, because you're being watched by children, by adults, by vulnerable people, and we're all learning of what we see every day.
So, Mazan, I would like to pass the floor to you because you talk a little bit about your act as the ACNUR, as the UN Refugees Ambassador. So, when you became an ambassador, you said that the strength of the refugees and their capacity to persevere and the capacity to extract the best of a difficult issues are reasons to celebrate. So, your talk, as your previous talk, is very powerful. And it helps like to fight this idea that unfortunately we see growing of like prejudice against like refugee people. So we see it growing all over the world in developed countries, like this hate, as if a refugee was a threat, as the immigrant was a threat that would take your job and take your home and the money, and then on the threshold like eat your pets. So we know that this is an absurd. So how we that act working as content creators on the internet can be useful as a counterpart like against this idea and the refugees.
Should never take for granted the kind of impact social media has. I mean, I know that people follow me first and foremost because I'm an actress. They want to know what movies I'm next in or what TV show I'm next in because they care, right? And we've seen the power of entertainment. You're going to be at Global Citizen now. I saw that you're one of the speakers. Global Citizen uses that power of galvanizing public figures, entertainers from around the world to spread good information. Their main thing and main tagline is to end extreme poverty. When I look at the power of who I get to be, I want to use it for something that's different. I want to be able to, if somebody's coming onto my Instagram to see what outfit I'm wearing, I know I'm wearing a very big dress today. But if they come to see the outfit I'm wearing today,
é lindo o vestido.
Thank you. I want them to come there, and that kind of traffic, I use it to also have some kind of social impact messaging that I have on my social media. Because I know that if somebody is an actress or a musician and they're saying something on stage, suddenly millions of people want to stop and listen. There's a reason why. Movies and television, you look at City of God, how impactful that film was to show the global audience, just a glimpse of what Brazil has to offer. So you see that power of social messaging, that power of storytelling, and you use that as the vehicle to get to the place that you want to get to. So when I see a prejudice that's going on, number one, I've got to hold our leaders accountable. People cannot be afraid if you teach them about something. People will be afraid if you're not teaching them about it. There's a very distinct thing that is done at the UNHCR when they're going to set up a refugee camp. They go to the host community, that's what we call them, the people on the ground, the people who are living there, because they are going to be hosting people from outside. So you create that harmony between the host community and everybody else who's seeking asylum. If you're able to have that, then you will have harmony. But if you don't do that, you then blame the people for having prejudice. But the people are having prejudice because people don't know. It's education, so we've got to be able to do that. We've got to have a little bit of empathy for people on the ground who are going to be the host, especially if you weren't taught that, hey, we've got to do this. This is the reason why. But secondly, I think the power of social media content creators has to lie in the social messaging. Content creators have to be much more responsible. They really, really have to. in the sense that if you can be able to talk about something silly or something stupid and you do something silly and something stupid and everybody's always engaged about it, teach yourself about something that's really important that affects you as a person, but most importantly, that affects society, because no man is an island. I have to still exist in society. For me to exist in that society, I have to exist amongst people who have empathy, people who are good, people who want to spread good, because it is a collective community.
Definitivamente não.
Definitely, it's not about like fame and advertising, like to make money. So there is, the semi-arid in Brazil has become more dignity. As I mentioned before, it's like 1 million cisterns. So you're talking about basic rights of like water access. So how was it like to implement, and how many people it has achieved? So just let me establish like a connection here with all the refugees. So somehow we had along the Brazilian history, like part of our population in the Northeast, as President Lula was like running away from the drought. So the Brazilian Northeast people have no idea the size it is, as if we were like putting France and Spain together. It would be like this region that we call it semi-arid in Brazil. It's a huge territory that like rains, but like in a very irregular fashion, only during a certain period of the time, and during sometimes people have very prolonged drought. It has happened during the Brazilian history, and people like desperately that could not plant, had no water to drink or eat. They ended up like moving to other cities, like small mid-sized cities in the south and the southeast. So we had a lot of prejudice against the people from the northeast that came like to the south in Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo, and that stopped happening. And so people do not realize like prejudice remains against like the people from the northeast, but they are no longer coming to Rio. One of the things, including Bolsa Família, and also access to water. In the semi-arid in the northeast of the country, we have about like 20 million people who want to live there, do not want to move out, do not want to go to the south. They want to live there. They are nomads as other nomads in the world. But they found a way of like resist to the climate, to the extremes, and then we see that happening in other places of South America, like also in the African continent, and here also. And then the people like from the northeast, they found a way. It was an invention, which is a way of like saving water. So they've developed an expertise, which is the cistern. So we know that during the President Lula presidency, we found that solution. We could see it, which is a cheap solution, local, that employs local people, that does not pollute, does not use energy. And it's a very powerful solution. It's an adaptation to climate change. If we could compute like 1.2 million cisterns that we built during that period, and now we are doing again, the biggest program like to climate change adaptation that I've heard of. So now I am like challenging, is there another one like for climate change adaptation that we reached millions of people, 1.2 million people. Each cistern is a family. So people were like carrying water on top of their heads, and it was a big struggle for them like to cook. Like, how can you cook beans if you have no water? You think that it's only water for drinking? No. We could not wash our hands, we could not take a shower or like clean our clothes. So it was an important achievement to give scale to the solution, which was created by popular wisdom. So we scaled it, 1.2 million cisterns. Now I want to value this idea that what the public policy in this case, the public policy watched a solution and scaled it up. Sensitivity, like to see that solution that was coming from the people. President Lula talks about that a lot. People don't bring only problems. People are the solution. It's the answer for the challenges that we have. I have a question for you all. As I've mentioned before, the number of people facing hunger, it's amazing, like 133 million people. But there are many initiatives all over the world to tackle this humanitarian catastrophe on a global scale. I would like to hear all of you, but Janja, I would like to hear you first about one of the initiatives that is calling the attention for this evolution, something that you have a direct involvement or that you are aware of.
I'd like to say, availing myself of what my colleague said, that even though there are many initiatives, local initiatives worldwide, sponsored especially by foundations, by groups that participate in that program that exists in the territories, I can't remember very well. But if we do not have political will from the state to face the matter of poverty and hunger, things will not change. So I think that probably the biggest thing that the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty brings is that it's a commitment of the state to counter poverty and hunger. Because no matter how much local initiatives do, they do not actually change the reality on a macro level. They do so at the micro level in the territories. So we really need to have a commitment of the state. And when I speak for the state, I mean a government commitment. Because if we didn't have the commitment of the Brazilian government through President Lula to combat hunger, we would not have created the Bolsa Familia program. We would not have created the Cisterns program. We would not have created the program to purchase food from family farms, which is an important program to fight hunger, while at the same time instituting local development. We buy food for school meals. I don't know whether my friends here know that in Brazil, school meals are universal. And this is the program that I wanted to refer to. All children in public schools in Brazil receive meals. The same goes in South Africa, right? So this was also a shared experience with Brazil. Many countries in South Africa have partnerships for school meals. We know of the difficulties that exist because many families have some children who go to school and others don't. So the family thinks also that children go to school to eat. And during the pandemic, this was a scandal because they couldn't go to school, they didn't eat, right? So these programs connect many things. Local development to family farming, for instance, because school meals in most of the country are made with the products made by local farmers. This is one of our directives. It's also connected to children's health, malnutrition. It's also connected to care because when a child is well taken care of, is well fed, the mother is left at ease to go out and work, to do her things, to have her time to herself, because you know how it is. Women have a lot of difficulty with having time for themselves. Well, that's another discussion, of course. And a child that's well fed can learn better. A malnourished child, even if she's at school, she will not be physically apt to learn and develop. Yes, that's right, exactly. I was recently in the opening of the UN Assembly in September in New York. And she was going to be here with us today. She couldn't be here because we had a problem with her trip through Holland. She comes from Ghana. She's a teenager. She's going to be with us on Saturday. That's right, girls, isn't it? Will Emmanuel be here on Saturday? Priscilla is part of my team. But I won't give you a spoiler, but she has an incredible experience with food. She comes from Ghana, and what she said really moved me. When I spoke after her, it was very difficult for me to speak because I was crying so hard. And sometimes we cannot get a true grasp on what's happening. If we eat 3 times a day, if we open our fridge and it's full of food, it's really hard for us to concretely understand what it is to go hungry. And in my mind, she was able to throw me and the audience as a whole into her reality. And I really couldn't speak because I was crying. So she's going to be with us on Saturday, and she's going to tell us more about this. It's going to be a very special moment because these are young people that are fighting against hunger. These young people who are in social media, I think it's very important for them to do their little dances and TikTok, but it's also very important for them to talk about these important matters. We need to bring young people into the agenda. We need to work on this hand in hand to fight the good fight. And when I say that, yes, President Lula is the beacon for the world in the fight against hunger and poverty, it's because of all the experience that we bring from our governments. If you have political will, if you have a commitment to change the realities, things happen. The solutions are there. We know what to do. I'm working in a project for energy poverty because this affects the lives of women. We have women in different territories in some countries of Africa that have to walk many kilometers to find fire logs. And during these walks, they end up being abused and raped, and they suffer all types of things. So what we're working on now is a project called Sustainable Stoves. This is a pilot project that I am very honored to be spearheading with the Ministry of Mines and Energy and Ministry of Social Development and others. And we want to take this to the world. We need to change the situation. When we speak about poverty and hunger, this really affects women and girls radically. And it's for that population that I gear all my efforts.
There is this project related to food at schools is amazing. So do you have an initiative that you want to mention? So Janja has taken my lead here. So you are so experienced. It's an honor to be here with you. Thank you. I should have spoken first, and that was my fault. Blame it on me. So I was going to say about school food. So you know that I love this initiative. If I had to choose only one, so there is not one specific agenda like to fight hunger. There is no silver bullet here. So it's a whole set of measures that must be worked around and being enhanced and improved. And so sometimes you have actions that we have had for a long period of time. So the national program for school meals dates back like from Getúlio Vargas. So we do have this program that has its ups and downs and has been centralized and decentralized at problems, corruption, and so on. But we have it since the 50s, and it's been improved. And one of its big improvement recently was to enhance the quality of the food, like to put two things together, like hunger and the appetite for eating, and then the procurement would be of the school's responsibility. So there is no way to take this opportunity as Janja has taken the first step. I can go a little bit deeper in it because it's very differentiated. In Brazil, we are stimulating that schools buy it locally, and then if you buy locally, so then you have less emissions and you eat fresher food, because sometimes children eat at schools, but they eat like cookies with like yogurt instead of like eating real food, which is what we are trying to do. So kids at school eating well at least once a day, they are protected at least for one moment a day with real food. So even though we have all this effort, there are some places that it's more difficult. Schools want to buy it, but they cannot. So I would like to take this hunch here and talk about a program that we are currently doing. BNDS is developing with the Amazonian Fund resources that we have identified that in the Amazon, that Amazon is that huge territory that people look and say, well, they have plenty of food and fruits and wealth, natural wealth, but it's one of the territories where kids eat more industrialized food that comes from the rest of the world. So food travels all over the country to reach the Amazon region. Then we have like costs associated, and we have emissions of the greenhouse effect gases, and people eating bad, and they eat more expensively. So instead of eating locally. So we are using like the resources from the Amazon Fund, and then help the cooperatives and local producers and to sell to the schools. It's not always easy, and help schools to buy it because it's not always easy either. Sometimes schools do not even have a kitchen, and if you don't, you cannot produce healthier and fresher food, and then you end up like buying industrialized food. So I will sell it my sustainable project like to BNDS. I was listening to you and thinking about it. So this is what we are doing here. So the experience of like school meals, it gets like the most vulnerable people, like children, and in a very strategic program, and it helps like family agriculture, which is a territorial dynamic, and I found it amazing. And I have to place high bets here, and reminding you that we cannot choose only one. It's a pool of saying that there is no way like to fight hunger and poverty that has like multi causes with one silver bullet. So you know that you began talking about like eating at the Amazon, thinking about all the fish, and I thought about my experience. I studied in public schools, and sometimes we had like rice and fish, and it was wonderful. I loved it. But you see, so we did. Did you ever eat something that was like a pink broth? Because I studied in public school, and they served something that was kind of like a product, something pink. Well, that's the sadness. And then like there was some construction, and they began serving like yogurt and cookies, and I tried like that work ended so we could eat well again. So I want to hear your initiative, Stuart. I want to know if you know anything, if you have a direct involvement, or if you are aware of.
When I heard the numbers that you referred to, so when I heard the numbers, in terms of how much hunger exists in the world, that's so terrible. And it's a bit frightening to listen to that. But still, we have hope because we see that many organizations are getting together to fight hunger. And although at home I do something that's very small in comparison with the rest of the world, I did have a small opportunity some months ago before I came to Brazil. Actually, I came because I was invited to an organization, and if I'm not mistaken in the name, it's a house in which they receive children from the community. The children go, they eat there, they learn, they watch movies, they do art. So it was more, they did more than private school. This was something that I had never seen before. And I went into the kitchen, we cooked together, we helped the children. And I was wondering, who organizes this so well? And it's so big. And if we think about big countries that are funding this, and what happened, in fact, was it was the community. It was actually the community that were getting together so that this small school/house could work this way. And everyone wanted to be a part of this so that the children had at least one plate of warm food a day and education. So this is something that really touches our hearts. And that was the first time that I had seen a cause like this one from up close.
So, in your case, do you have any initiative like to fight hunger and fighting like misery?
Well, before I forget, I have to commend Brazil. I have to commend you. A round of applause. The progress that is being made, how intentional it is, and how it takes into consideration the longevity and self-sustenance is something to clap about, so please help me. Brava, brava. Um, Thank you for actually, Janja, for mentioning energy poverty. Bridgewater and the World Bank actually just announced a partnership, and it was launched in Ghana alongside Global Citizen. So I do think that your project may be able to find partnership in that, because it's specific for energy poverty around the world and also particularly on the African continent. But I do think that there's a bridge that we could be able to have there. Energy poverty is something that is not spoken about, and it has to be, because so many people live without energy, and it shouldn't be, not in 2024. The different initiatives that I'd probably speak about is the schools that are being built in South Africa and have been built, and even across the continent as a part of Cotton On Foundation. Every single one of them has a nutrition kitchen. That's what we call them, the nutrition kitchen. The nutrition kitchen is there to actually cook food for the kids every single day. So it's five times a week, and it's usually 2 meals. So the kids will have breakfast, and then the kids will have lunch. There is no shame, because for a very long time, when I was growing up, if you went to the nutrition kitchen or if you were getting food from school and you didn't have your own lunchbox, there was a bit of shame there that, oh, you must not be able to afford lunch at school. But now every single one of the learners just go to the nutrition kitchen. It's delicious, it's nutritious, and it's very, very intentional. Every single day is all about counting the proteins and the carbs and everything. So it's very much directed towards that. So every single one of the schools that we have under the Cotton On Foundation actually have nutrition kitchens. The nutrition kitchens are not only for the kids at school, but also for the community. So women can come to the nutrition kitchen about 3 times a week. They can learn how to bake, they can learn how to cook, they can learn how to use vegetables. There's also there's vegetable gardens that are there on the school properties. So what you do is that you're teaching the kids as well that if you're growing from the ground, what does that look like? What are some of the nutrients that come from that? So it's been an incredible couple of years of making sure that it's a very intentional project, and it continues to run. And then, for me, at the very core of the work that I do, dignity is very important, and self-sustainability, because we do not want to build societies that continue to be a begging bowl. We don't want that. We want people to be self-sustaining. We want to build systems that can be able to operate on their own without waiting for aid. And as you said, Janja, we can't do those things without policymakers. We can't do those things without government being intentional about the things that they need to do. Women farmers need to be put forward. There are so many incredible women farmers out there, but they're not given the right tools, they're not given the right access. Those are the kinds of things that we push forward as well. And I'm going to be working with the PepsiCo Foundation very soon regarding that. But it is absolutely imperative that we have policymakers and government to be able to be equal participators in this conversation. We want real change. We don't want conversations all the time. We're like, where's it written down? Where are we finding the money? And how are we making sure that no one is left behind? So there's a lot of different initiatives that we do. And when I speak about the restoration of dignity, it really is about giving the power of purchase as well to the home. We want, for refugees particularly, a lot of them had to queue and wait for little groceries. And that's the meal for the week or meal for the month. But we sat back and we thought, what is the small decency and dignity that we can be able to plant back? And that's to give the power of purchase. So now they have a little card, and the card gets swiped, and they say, I want 2 portions of potatoes, I want 3 onions, I want 1 tray of meat, whatever that looks like. Because the restoration of dignity for human life is absolutely paramount. So for me, my final call, if we don't get to say anything, it's really, how do you show up in the world? How do you participate in society? How do you participate in your own community? I could sit here and talk about my life and where I come from and how I come from nothing and how I'm not even supposed to be sitting on this stage. But I continue to be a tangible representation so that any young girl who comes from where I come from is able to look at my life, be inspired, and know that even if she wants to be on television and the glitz and glam, that she can stand up for something that's much greater than herself and make the change that's necessary.
Eu tenho uma notícia para vocês e uma para ela. Para vocês é que vocês vão aplaudir mais na sequência, tenho certeza. E para ela que não foram suas últimas palavras, que a minha próxima pergunta é para você também. Você tem uma organização, pessoal, sem fins lucrativos, a Nonzamo Lighthouse Foundation.
And we are using like the Lighthouse Foundation using due to the eradication of the dead. So how is this experience? So I want to know about this, the building up of like schools all over the country using the funds that you've collected.
Essa fundação foi fundada por mim mesma.
Come from a elderly headed home. I was raised by my grandmother, who's late. And the struggles of coming from an elderly headed home, of somebody who has to rely on pension and understanding the value of a rand, that's our money and currency, the power of the rand and how to utilize that, and being a 10-year-old who had the responsibility of making groceries in the home. I knew that, okay, if there's any cause that we need to be able to power and champion as part of my foundation, it's elderly-headed homes and child-headed homes. Child-headed homes in South Africa are an incredibly huge issue. It started, I would probably say, when the HIV and AIDS pandemic happened, and a lot of the children were left parentless. And so big sisters and big brothers had to become the parent in the home. Most of them had to drop out of school. And so for me, it was a huge passion of mine based on my own personal experience. And that really was the first leg of the Nomzamo Lighthouse Foundation. The second and most important one is the scholarship program. In South Africa, we have something called the missing middle. The missing middle says, the system says, you should be able to pay for your school fees because your mother is a teacher. But what it doesn't take into consideration is that my mother can be a teacher and earn a basic salary, but she's also a mother of four, and she's a single mother. She cannot afford university fees. And I was a part of that when I lost my sponsorship in university, and I was faced with the idea of, do I go back home without a degree because now I've been financially excluded since I'm not paying my school fees, or do I fight through the system? And I fought through the system and I was able to access financial aid. But of course, once you have financial aid, there's still student debt. And student debt is also a big thing. I don't think that it's only in South Africa. I think student debt is a global thing. A lot of students, once they graduate, they find themselves in debt. So how do we do that? How do we get somebody out of that? For me, if a brand wants to work with me, they work with me and my foundation. So every brand that I work with, all the big brands that I work with, they all support my foundation in one way or the other. They put money into it. They say, do we need to hire anybody? Do you have any students, Nomzamo, that have graduated from your scholarship program? I'm like, yes, I do. And they need jobs. Or they have not graduated and they need computers. So I'll go to maybe Intel or whichever computer company and I'm like, hey, I need about 25 computers. No problem, Nomzamo. These are all for my students who are still in university. So it is to not only use the power of social media, but to use the power of, we want to work with you, we want you to talk about a skincare product, or we want you to talk about a dress, or we want you to talk about, whatever product that we're selling. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's fantastic, no problem. By the way, I also have a women empowerment grant. And I'm raising money for that. Do you have money in your kitty? And usually the answer is yes. And the only reason why brands continue to trust the Nomzamo Lighthouse Foundation is because I stay in my integrity lane. I stay in my integrity lane. If I say that I need 1 million rands, and this 1 million rands is going towards my women's grant, they put that money through and they see it. And they see it grow and they see the women supported. So how do I stay an integral part of that system? Is by staying with my power of integrity, of saying that you, big brands, you, big companies, you want to do good. Even philanthropists. Philanthropists want to do good. They have lots of money. They don't know how to do it. So if I know how to do good, if I know I can have boots on the ground and do what I need to do, then I'll just be the bridge in that. So that's what we kind of do, and I hope I'm not rambling.
Imagina, eu falei que vocês iam aplaudir mais.
I thought that we were going to give her even more applause. So it's important to say that there was a call, like from the Brazilian government, for countries and institutions to adhere, those who were interested in to be the initializers of the alliance against hunger and poverty. So let's get to know like those who are going to get close to the launch, the official launch of the alliance during the summit of the G20. I'd like to end our conversation, Jojo. What are the expectations of the Brazilian government about this adhesion and how this is going to work?
Well, I'm very happy because we have worked a lot on this. We have a task force of the Global Alliance that held many meetings. In June, we had the launch of the alliance, of the structure of the alliance. And today, if I'm not mistaken, we have 33 countries already. In addition, there are several entities that have joined the Global Alliance already, various organizations. And the work that you do with the big brands and everything, we are also starting to do that here. This event, for instance, is being sponsored by some brands that you may wonder, why are they here? Because they realize the importance of contributing to the fight, to fighting this good fight with us against hunger. So there are 33 countries, or 35, because it changes every day, right? Because the negotiations take place in the background, and with this or that coalition, important countries like France and Spain have joined the fight. The US, if I'm not mistaken. Where's Julia, my international advisor? I have an international advisor. Well, Julia is following the process with me as to adhesion after Monday or Tuesday. When this is over, we will see how many countries have joined, how many developing countries, the big finance institutions and funds, and that's what matters. Because all of these public policies that we mentioned here need to be connected to finance. We know how much African countries and countries of the global south have difficulties in investing in their countries because they are paying interests on the debt. And the new global financial architecture is just that. We're proposing for the countries no longer to pay their interest to invest in their countries because it's useless to have effective policies to combat hunger if there is no money. So the alliance connects these things. She connects funding with successful policies like we have in Brazil. And we have other experiences worldwide. We are going to have a big basket where we will have the big university centers, the academia, who will adapt the public policies throughout the different territories because this needs to be done. Something that works very well in Brazil may need to be adjusted for an African country or for Bangladesh or whatever in the various countries. But I am sure, and more than myself, President Lula is sure, and he is committed so that this global alliance is, as I said, something that will change mankind. We can no longer leave people behind. We have been leaving many people behind, developed countries, rich countries, or super rich countries, and we're not just speaking of countries either. It's a super rich period. I'm going to speak about something you may not have heard about, but the financial track of the G20 reached a general consensus that the super rich, and we're speaking about physical and people, we're speaking about Elon Musk, we need to tax the rich. They need to contribute to the world's development. They need to contribute. We can no longer have 5 or 10 people in the world hold the GDP of whole countries. This can't be. They don't even have where to spend all that money, not even if they did all the philanthropy in the world. This money needs to come into the public coffers of the country so that effective policies, state policies, not government policy. We need to speak of state policies, by the way, structuring policies that change the reality of the countries so that these things actually take place. Without this funding, without taxing the super rich, the great fortunes that dominate the world today, we won't be able to do so. We need to believe in this. I have a dog that I adopted this year that is called Hope. And then this Thai told me that she works with me. She said, Hope may be what really moved the year of 2024. We started the year in 2023 when President Lula took office. And I want to tell you that our motto was union and reconstruction. We were rebuilding a country that had been totally devastated by ignorance and denial, by a genocide. So this year we are working with hope. And I think that's what it's all about. What we're doing here is manifesting with words, with actions, this hope that we believe that we can change the world. But we can't just work based on hope and expectations. We need to work with strong action, full action. And that's why I believe that the Global Alliance is the beacon in the horizon that will materialize our hope for a more solidary, fair, and fraternal, and less unequal world.
Now the question goes to the audience. So at the beginning I said, so did you take any notes? So do you have any questions? So that's the moment. So that was the first one to raise his hand. So production, please take the microphone. It could be me. If I'm faster, I can do it. I can take mine. Hello? Let me just get closer to you. I do not want to mess it up. So good morning. So did you like it? So tell me, what's your name? William. Where you come from? So from Santa Catarina. So your question goes to, so one more comment, it's for Ganja. So first I would like to thank Janja's President, Minister Teresa. So just like talking about Bolsa Familia, it was a program that transformed, we can say that. It was the biggest program like for transfer of income in the world. So, and then we can talk about like money. I come from a small city, like 80,000 people in the countryside. So the money from the taxes go to the capital or to the federal government, and it's difficult to have it back. So it's sometimes, we do not agree fully, but the Bolsa Familia was a way like to have this money back to the city. So the person receives their card, receives their resource, and then they go and they spend at the local market, a local producer that produces food or family agriculture, and then this money comes back. So studies show that. So investing like 2.6 reais return to the Brazilian GDP, to the local economy, and for the local fees. So it's like a win-win situation. But how could we have like the intelligent, the clever entrepreneurs like supermarket or a small one, which are like the biggest the biggest amount in the country. So they know that at the supermarket in the neighborhood, if it was not for the Bolsa Familia, they wouldn't have enough resources. So they need this program, which is like this transfer of income. So how could we have more people, more entrepreneurs to defend the program and all the programs of social transfers? And what's the future? So President Lula has already said that we are not going to have like cuts, but if this program is being invested and becoming a priority of the federal government, so we can take that to municipalities, the resources and access to food for so many people. So just like to finish a request. So it's not like giving me a little bit of cramps here, but just to say that one of the biggest personal dreams was like to meet Chancho. Here we are. And another one was to talk to President Lula. We'll try until Saturday. We'll be here. And so, we can only achieve if we try it. So maybe I'll be here during the Summit of the Leaders. I'll be here Monday and Tuesday. I do not have a credential yet, but if you have any tip, please, like I can ask for one. So a comment, a question, and then, like a shade, and like full combo.
I'm going to speak to my friends here. We have a saying in Brazil that says that if you don't cry, you won't receive your mother's milk. So I don't know how. Oh, we have.
It says, "Uzoyithola kanjani uhlele ekhoneni?" How are you going to get it sitting in the corner? So speak up.
Bom, acho que talvez a Teresa pudesse responder melhor.
Maybe Teresa can answer this better than I. Well, the Bolsa Familia is an income transfer program. Teresa, correct me if I'm mistaken. And we know that the Bolsa Familia, its idea is for the family to be able to leave the situation of the Bolsa Familia itself. And we know that most of the families are single mothers that are heads of family. I don't have the numbers in my head here, but most of the ones that receive the Bolsa Familia cash transfers are single mothers and that receive the money for their children. And the prospect is for these women to leave their situation, that they improve, that they get a better job, that the family can have enough income to stay afloat. But it's as Teresa said, since 2013, we've been listening to people say, why don't you teach people to fish? I think that the Bolsa Familia works with many things around it. We have entrepreneurship programs, professional training programs, access to credit for women especially. One of the things that President Lula determined is that all credit access programs need to have a specific part that benefits women, a specific track, because they're the ones in the front lines in the country, in micro businesses, in the farms. They move the local economy. We have something that is called prejudice. We all know that. There's a lot of prejudice against people that receive Bolsa Familia transfers. We're speaking here about the networks. We have many digital communicators here. I haven't used the word influencers anymore. I consider you digital communicators. I think this will help turn around this idea of influencer that, I worked with girls when we formulated the CRIA G20, and we said we are going to create digital communicators that are effectively with us in some things that are fundamental, that can do their publicity okay, that's important, that's what they live off, but that they also take a message to the audience. And if I could say something to the digital communicators, I think that the experience of these two ladies by my side that see and do things in the fields and that know things concretely would be interesting for you to hear, to understand why some programs are so significant and so big for this government, which is the case of school meals, the Bolsa Familia, the program to purchase food, credit for women. And maybe if they look to this reality closer, this would be important for the communicators so that they can do what's your name? What Williams said, in terms of how can we show people how some things are important. You play an essential role. 2 million, 10 million, 20 million followers. That's a lot of people. I have 2 million, and I think, wow. And that's important. There are some things that some people that are, yeah, they're stupid. And while they complain, I do my work in trying to change a situation that I think we can only do collectively. Right? Just by talking to each other, this helps as well.
I think that it's a very cool, like to be a communicator than an influencer with 85K, and I'm happy, but you can move on. So one question. All right. Muka. So you see how I said it at the beginning? So my doctor asked me like to be fast because of my cramps. What's your question? Where you come from? I'm Hona, and I come from Belém do Pará, from the Amazon. So Hannah, so what's your question? It's very brief, so please. So you're going to say something that I like. So first, like salute everyone on behalf of our First Lady Janja. It's an honor, like to take this opportunity, this space, like to listen to you. But what I want to say came from something that you said that you mentioned about like school meals that you come from public schools. I'm also like I come from the public universities and quota system, so I was awarded by these policies that the Lula's government brings to us. So when we talk about the Amazon, and you said that there in the Amazon region people have fish and then what is that we must observe that the capitalist system is very cruel. And today, our acai that before was the main source of like nutrition, especially for more vulnerable families, and now it's being exported, and it became a lot more expensive as many other things in Brazil. We export and then we buy back, and this is what is happening there. So one of the ways that families consuming acai is at schools, like kids who live on the riverbanks. They eat acai at the schools because I believe that this is like the fruit of the policies that you were talking about, like buying from the local producer and then have it at the schools. It's a way like to repair this capitalism cycle that takes out food, which is the base of the riverbanks population. So we need food because eating bad is cheaper. Like eating high processed food is cheaper, and sometimes that's the only thing that people can buy: canned food or like instant pasta. And then there's no way that you can not bring this kind of like public policy and observe the changes that you see in the more traditional populations. So it was supposed to be fast, huh? Because many people here in the southeast do not know the reality that we live in the north. It's very different. We're talking about traditional people, quilombolas, and it's a very diverse population. But basically, that's it. All right, so our time.
She tricked you. She didn't really ask a question.
We have lots of hands raised, but time is up. Well, I apologize. So it was an honor to lead this panel. I would like to thank Sultan Nonzamo, Janja, and Teresa. So round of applause, people. Thank you all. Thank you all, the audience. Very interested and very interesting people. So thank you very much, those who are following us online. So those who leave now will miss something very important. So we do have the recording of our CriaCast Live presented by the Gears Hawk Blogueira of like low income. Those who do not follow them are missing. And contents will be recorded in the aquarium up there and just broadcasted by YouTube and G20 TV. So for those who are here, do not forget the workshops. We have workshops related to content creator and in the outskirts and entrepreneurs of like social housing and films and other contents discussing panels of the importance of the rural development in fighting hunger. Thank you all very much. Have a great afternoon.
Well, you didn't speak about the festival of the Global Alliance Against Hunger. I was waiting until the end. No, you were saying bye.
So you know that there was a big stage on the Praça Mauá, one of the most beautiful, or we're gonna have that.
It's for free. After all the activities are over here at the end of the day, we're going to have a happy hour over here. There's going to be beer. I'd like to invite you all to go see the festival of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. It's going to be 3 days of a lot of music, connecting everything that we spoke about today in a huge network for doing good with a lot of happiness, lightness, love and peace. And what we have to do is so Jorge, Jorge Nogueira, our dear minister Margaret, who was here a while ago, is going to be with us. And tomorrow we have Maria Rita, Zeca Pagodinho, Teresa Cristina. Saturday, Neo Mato Grosso, Seu Valença, Fafá de Belém, Brazilian music from the entire country, speaking to the world and launching this big and marvelous alliance against hunger and poverty. Be with us.
Want to see you all there. Okay, so Coulter is back. So now, good afternoon, everyone. So thank you very much. You were incredible as an audience. So now I want to invite like the photographers. So we are going to be here. So please stand up, photographers up front.
Yeah. This is my photographer. Yes. Olha pro drone, gente.
Cadê a mãozinha pra cima, hein? Cadê a mãozinha pra cima da galera aí atrás?
Tem.
Take a selfie.